Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're glad to have you here at Green Academy. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to everybody who's just joined us. We're going to wait a few more minutes to begin. Yes, as Britt just said in the chat, we would love to know which school you are from and where in the United States you are from. I'm guessing most of you are going to be from Tucson, but you never know. So don't be afraid to use the chat because that's how we can communicate together. So feel free to light up the chat. Oh, cool. We've got people from a lot of different places around Arizona. This is exciting. Thank you all for being here. Yes, you are very welcome, Daniel. Glad you could make it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Is it okay if I do a quick mic check over here?
Yes.
I'm going to step this way so I'm able to take my mask off for a second. Okay. I'm sure we're waiting for more participants. Okay. But I'll go ahead and do a quick introduction before I step into the live version of Green Academy. And I just want to say welcome. My name's Celine. I work within the school garden program as the food literacy coordinator. I work with Tucson Unified School District students and all areas nutrition-wise, culinary, food systems matter. So I'm really happy to be here. We're going to be filming a lot of the stuff that we're doing in person. And I'm going to be looking at the chat box to see if there are any questions. And I will pose it to the presenters as well. But just wanted to say welcome. And if there's any way that I can make this experience a little bit better, please go ahead and put it in the chat box and I will do my best. But I hope you enjoy yourselves.
Right, so for everybody to know, we are recording. So if you would prefer not to be recorded, just go ahead and turn off your video. Just a heads up that we will be recording this session. My name's Carly, and I'm the K-12 curriculum specialist. Wow. I'm the curriculum lead at the community and school garden program with the University of Arizona here in Tucson. Specialist, that's how you say that word. And this lovely school we are at is called Ochoa Community School. And it's here in Tucson, and we have decorated it with lots of marigolds and papel picado for our event today.
I'm going to be walking around our space. We are at Ochoa Elementary here in Tucson, Arizona. They were kind enough to host us here, so we were able to decorate their space and just make it a little bit more festive as this is a celebration. So I'm going to try to show you as much as I can.
For everyone who has just joined us, if you would mind putting the school that you work at and where you are coming from, where you are at, we would love to hear about that. So feel free to write in the chat, or at any time if you have any questions, any comments, the chat is our friend. We will be doing 2 sessions today, which will be introduced a little bit later, but one of them is a Marigold watercolor session, and the other is a Cempasúchil ofrenda session where you get to learn about the cultural roots of Dia De Los Muertos and the Marigold, and it's all extremely relevant in this part of Arizona, and so we get to explore that together, which will be very exciting. That's a taste of what we will be doing later on today. Yes, you will have access to the handouts. Thank you for asking, Monica. We will be putting those in the chat. So everything that you all see, all the handouts, you all will have access to as well. We'll put links to those in the chat. Good question. And thank you, Anna, for your comment. We spent a lot of time making paper marigolds with University of Arizona students and other kiddos. It was a lot of fun. Great Zoom time.
We are going to get started shortly. We have a big group that is joining us that is having trouble finding our space. So as soon as they get here, we'll go ahead and welcome them and then we'll get started. So thank you all for your patience. Oops.
Is anybody planning on doing anything with marigolds or Dia de los Muertos in your classrooms before we get started? If you are, please share in the chat or feel free to share live. Looks like we still have a few minutes before we get going.
All right, everybody. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. There might be some stragglers somewhere, no show right now, but I think it's about time.
Yeah, no, I know. It's like you gotta see this beautiful space, right? Thank you to the Ochoa community and the gardens. Just, I mean, the space itself is just beautiful. But thank you. We wanted to welcome you. It's kind of a joint presentation to our organizations.
Yeah, so I will say 3 of our organizations. We have TUSD here. I'm Caleb. I work with CSGP, Community School Garden Programs, and that's your name.
And my name is Nicole Ramirez. I know, it's always one, right? But we have our TUSD department. And long and short of that huge long title is that it's an opportunity to connect our culture, having students develop identity, and then looking at some of those social justice aspects within our community. So what better way to celebrate our 2 ideas of gardening and culture than the Sempacity or Marigolds?
Yeah, this PD goes by many different names: Marigold Mania, Marigold Madness. But it's really, like she's saying, celebration of culture around marigolds. And we're hoping you are able to be inspired in teaching your students. So I think we're going to start off by asking you what you know about marigolds. There's some in front of you on your table. But yeah, so maybe if you talk amongst yourselves.
And then if you're by yourself, maybe join the table.
Yeah.
We can have a conversation.
I do want to say one thing, that we are live streaming our Green Academy today. So if there's anybody that does not want to be on camera, please let me know. We are making this available for other individuals to join elsewhere. And I think that's pretty neat. So we have a group of about 20 participants online. So just let me know. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So maybe about 2 minutes, kind of have a conversation at tables, what you know from gardening with marigolds or culturally, but just those ideas, that community, right? Sharing some knowledge. All right. Well, it's associated with the fall. Yeah. Because it's just such
So for our folks online, maybe this is a good opportunity for you all to share as well some experiences with us in the chat box. So we welcome that. Any experiences you have with marigolds, anything that you know about marigolds, or anything you'd like to share.
Last Green Academy, you said
So everybody who's with us online, what is happening now is we're just discussing marigolds. We're grouping up and sharing together uses of marigolds, how we've, where we've planted marigolds, if we've used them in schools. I know there are a lot of comments already in the chat, so thank you for that. But just a heads up, that's just what's going on here. We're just talking about marigolds and their many uses. I know a lot of people use them in their gardens to deter pests. We'll be looking at some marigold tea later on as well. So anything having to do with marigolds, their uses or their relevance to you in your life, that's what is happening right now. That's the discussion that we're having. Yes, Jessica, they are edible. which I never knew before last week.
Okay, we can come back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's just so awesome to hear the rich conversation, right? Just getting to know our neighbors and one another. And that's kind of what we want to establish and be part of that culture that we're talking about. So what were maybe some of the ideas that you shared at your table? If you're not gonna answer, I'm gonna just volunteer. I know. How about this? Yes.
So we talked about how they come in with colors, how for cultural relevance, they use them for Dia De Los Muertos, where they use the petals to like talk for your ancestors. We talked about how they're edible. But you put them in tea, and you mentioned the recipe with the onions. So we have a lot of awesome qualities, features.
Thank you guys for sharing. How about?
I heard over here something about repelling things.
We were talking about how they're beneficial to the garden and how it brings in pollinators, but then also blocks nematodes. There was a list of other things they were beneficial for. And then also how there's some varieties that are gigantic, which
And-
sounds super fun.
And some that are just different in color. right?
Different in color, a lot of variety of colors.
So what makes that chemical property?
Yeah, I think.
Nice segue, right?
So I think it works two ways. Just one being a strong chemical that kind of irritates insects, smelling systems. And the second is that it hides the scent of things like tomatoes. It could hide the scent of that. So hornworms hornworms that would otherwise affect it just don't think plants are there. I think those are the two main ways that they repel.
Any other people that like to share? So part of what we're going to do today is participating in 2 activities. I believe what we'll do is stay at one station, and then after that time, we'll go to the second station. So instead of dividing into 2 groups, we'll just kind of congregate here since we are already here. And then we will switch presenters, and then you'll hear a little bit more about the history and the cultural relevance of the celebration of Dia De Los Muertos.
Do we offer you tea? Because we have some.
Yes.
Marigold tea.
How about during our intermission, but please feel free.
All right.
So my name is Katie. I'm a preschool teacher at Folly Elementary School. And I'm Stacy. I coordinate college and literacy.
And my name is Mark, and I work with community transition programs in Tucson Unified School District.
And the 3 of us got together to work on this workshop for you guys today. And, when we were sort of going over some of the ideas and things you can do with marigolds, you would be surprised at how many options there really are. But we settled on sort of a 2-part workshop for you guys. The first part is going to be doing observational drawings of marigolds. You have in front of you some watercolor paper, which we're not going to do the watercolor yet. We're going to start with the drawing. And you have pens in front of you, and we're going to really look at the details and what you noticed about the flowers. So I don't know how many of you are classroom teachers, or if you've done observational drawings before, if you've done them with your students before. Has anybody done one themselves or done them with their students before? Yeah, and I don't know, for me, in the traditional classroom setting, when you start talking about drawing flowers and your students are drawing flowers, at least at the elementary school level, it's like, there's the stick, and there's the circle, right? And then the 5 petals to go around it. I'm done. There's my flower. But if you really give them the time if you give them the actual natural example for them to look at, you can even go into the garden with your clipboard or bring it into your classroom. Just give them that time to really look, see the details, notice things, smell it, touch it, you know, draw the different parts, whatever is inspiring to them or to you right now in this workshop. So we're gonna take about 5 minutes or so for you to just, you're welcome to take some out of the jar if you want to look closer. If you want to kind of wander over to the marigolds growing in the garden, you can do that. But just take time to draw marigolds.
Each station is set up for 4 participants. So if you're at a station with more than 4, there are plenty of spots there's an extra clipboard and whole setup and everything.
Does anybody feel intimidated by this process? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's always a couple, right? Because you're like, I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to. And you would be surprised if you just slow down, look at the parts, look at the details, focus on the smaller parts at a time. You'll be amazed at what your pen and your hand and your paper are about to do. Also for the classroom, students can sometimes be intimidated if you just give them, this is a pretty detailed flower. If you just give them the flower to look at, they'll be like, I can see that. So providing them with samples of a variety of detailed drawings for them to look at as well, just so they can have some other inspiration and not feel so pressured for it to look a certain way.
We have some folks online. Is it okay if I stay here so they can observe? Excellent.
So for those of you who are joining us online, Britt has put a link into the chat to the Google Drive, which has all of the resources on it for you to take advantage of. And one of those resources is a how-to for how to make your own watercolors using parts of marigolds. So I hope that you all can find that. Let me know if you're having trouble with the link. But that's a really cool resource, and it talks a little bit about chemistry using acids and bases to alter the color of the marigolds and using other natural dyes as well. If you all have paper and a pencil handy and you would like to do some sketching of your own, now would be a wonderful time to do that. It can feel really nice to just take a break and see where your pen brings you. If you have marigolds to sketch, even better. If you would like to look up a photo, whatever floats your boat. This is just a time for drawing marigolds. That's what's going on here. All right, Celine, we're going back to you in the garden.
That looks great. So have you all done this with your students in the past or something similar? Not necessarily Marigolds,
I've done it with native plants.
native plants. Yeah, that's a great one.
See how the leaves
When I'm
are
doing
showing up.
observational
Nice.
drawings, I always like to
Excellent.
use Sharpie.
Yes, my student
in
saw
case
a
they wanna
video on
add
YouTube
your
about how to
watercolor
draw
on top of it,
marigolds.
so
Where
it doesn't-
we usually watch videos on how to draw stuff, but
whatever
this
you're
would be
drawing
great,
doesn't
taking
really
in the
matter.
actual flowers.
Right.
Instead of
Natalie
just
has so
watching
many.
videos. Absolutely, agreed.
For your this would be
Oh,
perfect.
I know, yes.
And then I have them press up and like try to feel the texture.
That's really
And then so
cool.
then it feels like very, very light and stuff. And then because it's very natural, there like just like light there.
That is
Light
so
just
cute.
scratches
How
you.
cute is that?
Look
at the collection.
I know.
What'd you do with the
Our permanent markers so that we can add our second layer.
Has anybody done a watercolor project like this with students before? Such as like doing a still life drawing and then using the color from those plants or animals in the case of cochineal to make the dyes that you use in your painting. Feel free to share in the chat. I think it's one thing to paint something with your students, but it's another thing to actually make the paint that you're using to be part of that process. Just adds another layer of how interesting it is and the complexity of what you're doing. It's a lot of fun. Ah, you painted with mashed nopal tunas. That sounds like a great idea.
You can add more to it. I just wanted to get a chance to talk to you about the second part of the workshop. So the next element that we talked about is adding the watercolor to the drawing. And because we are talking about marigolds, we decided to make our watercolor out of marigolds. So we have in the middle of your table is the jar labeled with an M. You'll see some of the marigolds kind of floating around in there still. We've created some natural dye in there. So we have natural dye from marigolds, we have natural dye from hibiscus, and we also have natural dye from beets. And we also included some synthetic dye on the table. So you'll see Barbara was swirling around. The green is synthetic and the brown next to it is also synthetic. So we kind of did a little combination so you would have a good palette to work with. And in making the natural dye, there's so many different ways that you can do it. It becomes an experiment for sure. You know, people have been making natural dye for thousands of years. And I learned in my research that synthetic dye was created in 1856 on accident by scientists trying to make something not synthetic dye, some other kind of chemical. And he ended up with a mauve synthetic dye. So there's lots of different ways that you can make your natural dye. I think for our techniques, we've boiled the materials in water and then Just sort of left some of the pieces in there. But we'll be giving you guys a worksheet that has some other ideas of what you can do with the natural dye. And then we also added in our experimenting, we also added vinegar at your table and baking soda. And as I was kind of playing with this process of making natural dye, I was talking to Mark and Stacy and telling them like, oh, you know, some places say you should add vinegar, does this to the color, and some say you should add baking soda, does that. And then Mark reminded me that
just, you know, it's your, so you're all teachers, classroom teachers, and you know your science standards, but you know, you have your acids and your bases and what they do when you mix them together. And it's always fun, and you can always do this sort of extension with adding it to dye and seeing what it does to the colors. Does it make them brighter? Does it make them duller? Does it wash them out completely?
yeah, so like I have a little sample here where this is the control, this is what you guys have in the Marigold jar. And then this was, I added baking soda to this one. And then this one I added vinegar and a little bit of turmeric, which we don't have, but the vinegar still changed the quality of the color. So you guys are welcome to experiment with that. Mix some vinegar, mix some baking soda. There's lots of different techniques and things you can do. So have fun. Yeah.
And just remember too, with watercolors, it's important to just keep layering. That's kind of how the nature of the paint works. And a lot of these dry a lot darker than you would expect too. So
Yeah, like you'll see a lot of people are saying, oh, the yellow's not showing up or the gold's not showing up. And once it dries after over time, it really does pop. Anyone needs extra cups at their table for painting? Oh, and the hibiscus comes out differently. Has anyone worked with hibiscus dye before? It comes out different than you would expect. So it's actually, I would recommend testing the colors on the side of your watercolor, but I understand if you don't want to change the way that your drawing looks or your painting looks, but the hibiscus ends up, even though it looks red in the jar, it ends up being sort of a bluish purple. So you can even mix colors if you wanted to make new colors.
Yeah. Good.
And we had someone in an earlier session put the baking soda directly on their painting and kind of just rub it around on their painting. And that was another technique that worked really well for them.
Yeah, I like your technique of just kind of making like a legend of with the different color cards.
Yes.
You can kind of see what.
So Britt is sharing watercolors page on her.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
So
Baking soda does make it like.
got a hard time pulling it up. It's there as well. And then you can see on the Green Academy live camera, that's how people are painting. So yeah, the process is right there on Britt's camera. Heat some water, put petals of marigolds in the water, let it steep, and start experimenting. And a question I have for you teachers out there is, how would you personally adjust this for different grade levels? I can imagine that painting goes really well for really kids of all ages, but I'm curious what your thoughts are for how you would adjust it for the kids that you are working with. Feel free to share in the Amy, I really like about what can you find in the garden that you could use as a dye, and then graph of make a graph of how well things work. That's really cool because it includes both math and science and art. The garden is such an awesome place to interweave all of the things that go on at school, all of the subjects. That's a really beautiful thing about it. Thanks for sharing, everybody.
Alrighty, I'm walking around. Just let me know if I'm not getting good footage. Britt, I'm having a hard time seeing the screen of my own, just because I have two screens on my phone. So just let me know if I'm not recording. Perfect. Right. So here we have our folks here. I'm going to go ahead and share your beautiful art with the people that are online. Looks wonderful. So this is, let's see, I'm going to focus on this. So this is a marigold one that they're utilizing. Let's see, which one's the beat? This is the beat. This is the beat one. Yeah. That's the hibiscus. Yeah. Thank you.
Are you done with the green? Are you done with the green?
I heard you say that, but I was like, when I left this color, it looked like this. Totally different. I think I saw one. Red in the jar.
Have you all done an activity similar to this before with your students? No,
Not with the dyes, no.
not with the dyes. Is this something that you think would work with your grade level?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any grade level, even the kinders, I think, would understand it. They'd have fun making the dyes.
Oh, yeah.
Mashing up the stuff.
Kindergarten would have a blast. What do you teach, Miss Barbara Hurley? High school. Excellent.
Environmental science.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll have a great time.
Oh, yeah, I thought they'd like it. We had lots of miracles. And they did, they recently did a activity using the cochineal, the bug on the cactus that makes a red dye. And they had fun with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Excellent. The cochineal dyes. Yeah, we had some people online that were speaking about that as well. So that's really neat.
And that was really fun. And then use the vinegar and the baking soda.
Yeah.
To make that. And it worked to change it as long as they didn't put both in, because that put it back to neutral.
Excellent. Oh, both of them. That's right. Science, adding science to all of this. See. Is it okay if we show our folks yours? It looks like it's a great example of how we could test.
Oh, wow.
Again,
¿Qué
you know, this goes
combinaste?
by really fast. You guys have
Marigold
about 1 more minute.
baking
And
soda.
if that's any experimenting you want to do with colors, anything you want to add to your paper, any more drawing you want to do. And then we're going to take them up over there to dry while you do the next part of your sheet.
Y esta nomás era sintética, ¿verdad? Esta pintura.
Brown.
Porque hasta puedes sentir como los senses, like, how does it feel, you know?
So many.
All right. Just like the great artist you are, it's gonna have to do that last brush stroke and walk away. It's that transition.
Anybody drawing at home? Would anybody like to show us what they're working on? Any doodlers or artists out there? We would love to see your 5-minute masterpieces. Ooh, so it looks like a lot of people are sharing. Yay. I see Heather and Ashley and Asia. Lovely. Yay, thank you.
So awesome. Amazing.
Lo voy a doblar.
Bien, pero ahorita se me quedó al lado.
The nice thing about this project is that can have some kids really love to draw and they're good at it, but other kids feel self-conscious, but they can still express their creativity by just the colors that they make and the colors that they design by adding baking soda or vinegar or lemon juice. There are multiple ways for the kids to be creative, and it doesn't mean that you have the best flower. Maybe it means you make the most beautiful color. I like that there's opportunity for numerous strengths in this mini project.
All right, we are now going to move over to our next station. Our participants are getting to enjoy some of the Marigold tea. And we also have pan de muerto that we got from a local bakery here in Tucson. So we'll just make that transition and we'll get started on the next one shortly.
Has anybody ever made marigold tea or tea out of another type of flower? And who has anybody made pan de muerto or shared it with your kiddos as a part of celebrating this time of the year?
Chamomile grows pretty well.
Sounds delicious.
And then we have 2x4s and slats, and then we have the bed liners.
So if you guys want to step on into the garden area, and we can start. Yeah, go ahead and join us in here. You don't have to sit in the sun. If you want some shade, you can utilize that area, this area.
It's golden hour though, so it'll make for good photos.
Yeah.
You have a good side.
All right. So again, my name is Nicole Ramirez. I'm going to present a little bit of our background and history, and then some ideas to incorporate into your classrooms as well. And then I'm going to read you a story, and then you guys will have an opportunity to make some paper flowers, so paper zapatos. So Dia De Los Muertos is a tradition that dates back not just to our European Catholicism, but it is dated back to our Mexica, Nahua traditions, Olmeca, Maya. So we want to honor that first and foremost, because many of our traditions we know are integrated, right? It's not just something that happened or created, it was integrated. So the celebration is actually between 2 months, from October and November. So halfway between October and halfway between November, you have a celebration in honoring Mictlan, which is the underworld in Aztec tradition. And La Muerte, or forgive me because this is the name that is very difficult to pronounce, so if anybody would like to take it, La Muerte, or Mictlantecuhtli, I believe. But do not quote me on that one because that is a very difficult one to pronounce, and I try my best to honor those names. But it was a celebration, fertility, harvest, and also of the monarch butterflies, which are our pollinators. So it's very cyclical. If you think about it, everything that grows returns back to the earth. And elements are important within the traditions as well. So all of these ideas and celebrations and rituals were incorporated into the All Souls, which is the Catholicism, the Catholic traditions, in the European. So when the two merge together, then you have traditions like marigolds. We think about all the flowers that are used in funerals. Why the marigolds? This is an Aztec tradition. Papel pico is an Aztec tradition. And then the copal, which we don't have on the altar, but copal is that burning of sage, that cleansing with the smoke. So part of the tradition is having those 4 elements: earth, wind, water, and fire. Thank you. So the velas represent that fire. The copal is that smoke. And then you have the earth, which is your flowers, the food. So the pan de muerto, that's also on the altars. You have the papel de pico, which is the representation of wind. And beautiful geometry and artwork, right? But think about how you can even incorporate that into your classrooms, right? With the map. And then finally, probably the most important, honoring of loved ones. Now, for many of our students, we're thinking, well, this is a tradition that's not scary. It's a tradition to celebrate and honor loved ones. So, for example, many of you might say, well, this might be kind of a touchy subject for students to touch on. But think of all the opportunities that your students have when sharing these stories. If given the opportunity, those students not only share with you their stories, you share with them. Think of all that richness, that community you create. Part of our Sparks framework is that we build on our identity. We build on our cultures. We allow students to share those stories. This is that opportunity. So students could make a shoebox altar. They can use trifolds. In your handouts that they're passing out to you is paper that you can photocopy. It can be poetry, it can be writing. So if the students are able to write about loved ones, what about even pets? What about even ode to things they've lost in COVID, right? right now we've experienced so much loss. It was beautiful to hear some of my students presenting. And they said, I miss not being able to go visit my nana and tata in Mexico because it's so hard to cross now with COVID. I miss that. Another little guy, he lamented about, hey, my favorite restaurant, Chuck E. Cheese, where I had my birthday, my 5th birthday closed down. So these are experiences that are not only healing for our students, but it's a chance for them to tell their stories. So it can be a numerous amount of things. They can celebrate celebrities that have passed away, historical figures. So there's many opportunities, writing opportunities, research opportunities. Part of our altar as well is the sugar skulls. In those traditions, the sugar skulls are meant to not only be on the altar to honor, but they're also for the kids that we celebrate with. Again, it's not a scary tradition. This is something that's celebrated. So you might see calaveras or calacas that are toys for students or children. You'll see the sugar skulls. The recipes are super easy. I would suggest you make them ahead of time and then have the students paint them. In the last class, they said at Estrellas, they're selling the sugar skulls already done. So many of us who have done this, we're like, oh, that is so awesome. Imagine making 30 of these. Now, the molds are super simple. The recipe is simple, but it does take some drying time. Also have opportunities for students through like the famous La Catherine. Now that is actually from Jose Posada, Guadalupe Posada. So let's say that you want to try something with students that's like a political cartoon or meme. They're called calacas. There's a great story called Funny Bones. It's written by Duncan Donahue, and he's a wonderful illustrator that uses the style of the Mexica. And in that, he gives you an autobiography of where the Catrina comes from, that famous image of the lady with the large hat and skeleton. But it was a political cartoon. So maybe even that would be something you can do with your students. A political cartoon or meme that kind of talks about that social justice. Now, the story, many of our curriculum right now is delving into folklores and legends. Integrating these types of stories not only is touching on our ELA standards, but it's providing them a sense of their heritage. So we're gonna go ahead and make our paper flowers. I'll give you a little bit of instruction, but it's super easy. You fan fold the papers. And when you fan fold the papers, in the center, you put a pipe cleaner, and then you separate the flowers, and you have a gorgeous flower. Now, some also variations, you can cut the ends. These are another activity you can do with your students to decorate your altar. Again, remember, it could be as simple as a shoebox altar or as beautiful as the Ochoa altar that you guys saw when walking in. Again, these are ways to bring together your community, your students, your parents, your family. So while you're making your paper flower, I'd love to share the Leyenda de Tepaziti. When I read, I love to do a little bit of dramatic. So as I say, it's ponte poquito salsa en el taco, right? So the beautiful story began when two young Aztecs were still very little. They used to spend all of their spare time playing and enjoying and discovering their town together. Although Xochitl was a delicate girl, her family let her join in the adventures of her neighbor, Huitzelin. With time, it was only natural that their love would flourish. Ay, mira, it's already like a novela, right? I know, yes. They particularly enjoyed hiking to the top of the mountain where they would offer flowers to the sun god, Donahue. The gods seemed to appreciate their offerings and would smile from the skies with warm rays. On a particularly beautiful day at the top of the mountain, they swore their love would last forever. When war broke out, this is where you can do that dramatic effect with the kiddos, Huitzilin headed to fight and protect their homeland. Now, this is where I would make a prediction with our students. What do you think is going to happen next? See, every single class that I've done with, even the little ones, he's dead. Se van a morir. I'm like, really? No happy ending? They live happily ever after? No. Okay, siempre, right? Soon the dreaded news of Huitzilin's death reached Xochitl. She felt her world fall to pieces, her heart completely torn. She decided to walk one last time to the top of the mountain and implore the sun god Tonatiuh to somehow join her with her love, Huitzilin. The sun, moved by her prayers, threw the rays that gently touched the young girl's cheek, and instantly she was turned into the beautiful flower of fiery colors, intense as the sun's rays. And then suddenly a hummingbird lovingly touched the center of the flower with its beak. It was Huitzilin that was reborn as a handsome hummingbird. The flower gently opened its 20 petals, filling the air with a mysterious and lovely scent. The lovers would be together always, as long as cempasúchil and hummingbirds existed on Earth. And this is how the cempasúchil flower came to be the Day of the Dead flower. And we think about that tradition of how something so powerful as a legend had to be ingrained into that merging of those two cultures, the European and our Mexican Nahuatl community, that this was the chosen flower. That's how powerful stories and legends are. Part of our celebration is our pan de muerto. Okay, so there's many recipes for pan de muerto, but if you've ever eaten any type of Mexican sweet bread, it's kind of crunchy on top, sweet sugar coating, but then the inside is that bread. The seasonal breads and recipes that they use are the cinnamon, the anise, the orange, and those again are those seasonal tastes that we experience. So I also invite you to share and partake in the pan de muerto as well. And that's one of those important features on our altars. But thank you, guys. Is there any questions?
Why is this hard?
Of course. Yes, question? What was that?
Why is this harder than it should be?
I know.
Right?
It
I'm
takes a little bit
told
of
it like
practice.
5 times. I can't, I don't know.
And honestly, I think we do this together, right? So that way, one, we can practice before we gotta present it to the kiddos. And then two, when that kiddo's struggling, you're like, I feel your pain. I know what it feels like, kiddo.
I'm just telling you, I folded it and now I'm just gonna go like this.
Yes, and it's okay to be creative. That's what I would tell my kiddos. Yeah, problem solve.
I was like, I give up.
So as our closing, we'll probably come back together and invite our garden. Yeah. Of course.
I'm doing a presentation.
Oh, that's perfect. If you need like the PowerPoint, just give me your name and email, and then I will.
Anybody have any questions that you would like to share with any of the presenters? Please put it in the chat and Celine will ask for you and you'll get your question asked and responded to right here, right now. So feel free to put any questions that you have about anything that we've touched on or learned about or seen today. Feel free to share it in the chat. Any and all questions are welcome.
So thank you everybody for coming. There are lots of new faces, so it's really nice to see some new people. as we're kind of finishing up our paper marigolds, if anybody has anything to share about how they particularly connected with one of the activities or how they could extend it into their classroom. So it's kind of good to share those ideas because then it kind of inspires everybody else too. So anything anybody want to share right off the bat?
My kids are gonna boil flowers to make ink and we're gonna paint.
Yeah.
That was super fun thinking.
Do you have flowers growing right now, or how do you think you'll apply
We
it?
have dead marigolds, does that count?
Yeah, so that's how we made. So yeah, drying them is like one of the more important steps before you make the dye too. So that would be a pretty.
We're gonna collect used cans and then put those on a burner for them to heat up inside the can.
Yes, that sounds
So
great.
we're just recycling it.
And think about, you could even paint like some of the calavera with the paper, like, hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Making it part of that art extension, but also the science and the ELA. Whole project that.
There is technology to find out what colors to make different things. So
Exactly.
the math to find out how long to boil it or how much ratio.
Very cool. Anybody over here have any new experiences or ideas that you might be using in your classroom?
I think I will be doing everything. The flowers, the color painting.
Nice. Very cool. It's nice to have an installation and we're both yeah.
Yes.
Yes. We have a question from our online friends. Jessica Paul is asking if there are other flowers or plants that are closely associated with Dia de los Muertos.
As far as I know, it's the cempasúchil. It's the marigold that is predominant. I know that in some of the artwork that I've seen in Mexico City and DF, they do utilize other flowers to kind of add to those colors. In the front of your leyenda, there's some beautiful artwork here. So these flowers, what they'll usually do is on tombstones to decorate the tombstones, but they'll use the flowers as art across the tombstones. But mostly it's the cempasúchil.
Yes.
It's the marigold.
It's the marigold. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to share anything else? Have any questions or something that really stuck out to them during the experience today? Great. Well, everybody on the list that participated today will get a follow-up with PDF forms of all of the instructions. And if you think of any other questions, let us know. Also, please share photos with us of any of the projects that you do with kids. It's really awesome to see the ways that they're interpreted in your own classrooms. And yeah, it's really nice spending the afternoon with you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
You want to take and plant in your garden, you can take as many as you want.
Also, if you want to support
Thank you everybody for joining us. We're so glad that you could be here. Please let us know if you have any questions. Britt has the link for resources, the almanac sign up. If you would like a copy of our brand new, beautiful almanac, it's a Sonoran Desert School Garden Almanac. If you sign up, we can mail it to you if you're not here in Tucson, or if you are in Tucson, we can drop it off at your school. And we will also send out an email with all the resources that are in that link as well. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time and have a lovely, lovely evening.
Thank you all so much for joining. Take care.
We have like the library. You tell me what you.
Resource classes, so it's a lot to balance.
They won't need to be harvested until there's a freeze, but it's all, a lot of it's ready.
We watch a video on pictures. You know how the leaf is and that's why they fire everything. So they can cut.
Oh, so they just.
That's what they fire.
They just cook through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just like do a fast burn at the top. And then cut it
Thanks, everybody. We're signing off. Have a good night. Feel free to email us with any questions that you have.